Oh my God, look at this. Where are we? We're on NEWSPASTY. And we're in Israel 24 News. I-24 News. That's what the I stands for. Israel at war. Day 34. PIJ releases video of 2 hostages held in Gaza. Israel at war. It's true. These poor folk, 2 of the people who got kidnapped, I feel for them. I'm sorry to their families. This is a horrible situation in loads of different ways, and of course, every side will use the horrors of all of their existence to say this is why my plight is important to watch. And we got to remember, all sides have winners and losers. All sides. There is no difference between that. There is only meat and there is only pastry. And maybe there's a few onions in there, but let's not talk about that now. Let's watch this. What's it called? It's called Douglas Murray, October 7, got quickly knocked down the news agenda. The world must know more about it. And this is, of course, Douglas Murray plugging his propaganda tools to the propaganda machine of I-24 News. Let's indulge.
And still with us in studio, we have our defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev.
And still with us in the studio, we have the Toidles, those pesky Toidles. Look, there's 3 of them. There's Tubby Toidle, there's Broomstick Toidle, and there's Robo Murray Toidle. Look at Robo Murray. Look at how he's sitting. Look at that. That is just, what is that? I'm about to go on the offensive and I will have no resistance because I am on Israeli television.
Middle East correspondent Ariel Osran. And joining us in studio is Douglas Murray. He's a prominent British author and commentator. He's been outspoken on a number of subjects.
Prominent. They want to call him prominent. I don't know if he's that prominent. I don't know. They push him on things like Question Time as the alternative voice, but the alternative voice is very extremely vacuous and just basically, you should all be very angry about this all of the time, and you should be angry for our side and not their side. Look at the things they do. Oh, hate, pain, fear. That's what he does. That's what he does. That look on his face is, I'm going to try and spread some more fear, and I can get away with it here. There is a very, for Douglas Murray, he has a very flat smile there, very serious smile going on, where normally it's wry smile, it's up at the side. It tends to go up just as you look at it on the right, so on his left.
Sometimes controversially so. One of those issues has been the influx of Muslim immigration into European nations, which he challenges is helping undermine the democratic values of Western societies.
Democratic values!
In his defense of Israel, especially in the current conflict, effectively making the case for its
look at them pushing the propaganda images in the background. It's like he's been talking about this destruction of everything that you see and everything being destroyed by the Muslims who was coincidentally surrounding us, and who's our enemy? Oh, well, they just happen to be Muslim, don't they? Ooh.
Battle against Hamas in the media, and he's now here even doing some field reporting from down on the Gaza border. Douglas, before we speak, I just want to know, today is the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. It's
the 85th anniversary. Isn't it the 75th anniversary then of 1948? Is that right? Is that 75 years ago? Is that 85 years ago since Kristallnacht?
Aimed at the Jews of Germany and Austria. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke in Berlin today at a memorial ceremony, and he had this.
Wow! So they're going into Palestinian neighborhoods on the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht and forcing Palestinian shopkeepers out of their businesses. Shit, man! I know. I mean, I don't know why you'd start with this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jews have been marginalized for centuries. Still and again,
I have to say, I know that the Jews have had quite a trek of it and quite a hard time because I document a lot of this. But how many sentences have been started like that? The Jews have been marginalized and targeted throughout history is a lot of lines nowadays.
And again, even here in our democratic Germany, even after the violation of civilization committed by Germans during the Shoah, it is a disgrace. It outrages and shames me deeply. Any form of anti-Semitism poisons our society, as Islamist demonstrations and rallies are doing now. We do not tolerate anti-Semitism, nowhere.
Douglas, we'll get to what you've seen here and be doing in Israel in a minute. But I just ran that clip because it was striking that Chancellor Scholz mentioned the Islamist rallies being seen in Germany.
Look at this. Look at this. Douglas Murray's really confident on this one. He knows he can bat any of this one out of the park. To be honest, they don't bring in opposition. I don't think they bring in opposition, do they? Look, everybody there is probably on board.
And linking that with anti-Semitism, even with the Nazi period. I said before, outspoken about, as you see, the influx of, or the impact of the Muslim immigration, eroding of some democratic values. You've taken some heat from that, certainly. So I want to get your reaction to what we've been seeing, there in the streets of
I enjoyed
Germany,
their faces then. I enjoyed their faces. You'd be taking some heat from that. It's like Wordsworth. You said bad, you said bad, you said bad, you said bad. The other side didn't like that much. And then they both have a little smile.
Of the UK framing with these rallies, which are not just pro-Palestinian, but in many cases pro-Hamas.
Well, you say I've been outspoken.
In many cases,
I've just said what everyone can see with their eyes.
But not
You've jumped on every bandwagon that has the same theme. And so you say it, of course, everybody sees it with their own eyes because the bandwagon is rolling and it's there to aggregate and see aggregators rise to the top, you know.
Not everybody has spoken out about, so that's why I say I've spoken.
But it's not controversial.
You're a
what
hero.
I've said for years has been that if you import people from different places in the world, you also import the problems from those places. If there was a war tomorrow between India and Pakistan, it would break out on the streets of Britain as well, because we have very large populations from both peoples. It's inevitable that if you allow very large influx in the Muslim world into Europe, into Britain, that has...
Historically, we've seen lots of troubles in the past between India and Pakistan, and I don't think you see masses of riots on the street, though there is interracial hatred in all societies and fighting. So I'm not sure if that's all true. But I listen, I live in Britain. My area, the area I live in 10 years ago, was full of people who were noticeably British. You know, they were British in all the way, Welsh, Cardiff type. You know, it's a very Cardiff area. Now it's mostly seems like it's Indians and Muslims and other things. And I live really near a hospital, so we already have a lot of people who are from other countries working in the hospital, because hospitals tend to be stocked by migrants, people who have come into work. So I have positive experiences from that. I have lots of positive, so I don't have any complaints per se in my own personal life. Going around meeting Indian people, they're kooky. They are very scared of a dog. My little tiny dog, my little tiny Bella, that they're willing to throw themselves into traffic if she walks down the road. That's a bit strange. I don't know how you handle that with such fear of dogs. But mostly the majority is really extremely positive interactions where they keep themselves to themselves. They don't intermarry outside their own people. So they go and get a husband or wife in India who's arranged, and then they come back and bring that person over, and then they have kids. Now, down the line, those kids are also going to do the same, and also going to do the same. In a sense, those people will never integrate. They will never integrate. They will never integrate. They're not going to intermarry to British households, and that's remained true over and over again. But these facts are hard to take grasp or get a grasp of and work out what is actually negative from that, because those people's lives don't bother me. They benefit me in many ways. I go to the hospital with some complaint, and there's a load of people staffing the place up that look after me and put me through the bits and bobs, and there's people working in the shops locally and other things who are helping out, and there's people all around the place from all of these different communities helping out. I don't see the negative. The kids are extremely polite. I mean, both I know a few Muslim kids around here and a few Indian kids around here who are just the most politest kids. They're really nice. So it's like hard to find any negative in my experiences personally. But I see that there's massive negative consequences for loads of people around this country, and that means that I know that people like Douglas Murray will jump on this whole bandwagon of, look, if there was Indian and Pakistani people fighting, and then this would happen. But that's a really simple way to look at it. There's been loads of standoffs between India and Pakistan historically, and it's never been a big kickoff. It's about the agitators and the aggregators and the aggravators and the people within the country who are digging around at the culture and trying to move people on, trying to get people, like gather people up and push them in a certain direction. That's kind of a negative direction, one that ends in violence, one that ends with one group of people on the streets meeting up another group of people on the streets, and they both hate each other, because that's what Douglas Murray wants. He wants people to march against people who are marching on them.
Consequences, as we see in America, much small immigration to America, but it has a very palpable effect. You've got to remember that in Europe, far-right anti-Semitism of the kind that we saw in the middle of the last century is so toxic. It is so pushed to the margins. There are still some scummy people who play around with these dark things, but they're nowhere near the center of power anywhere.
I have a hard time believing completely in the idea that Nazism was just all far right. Like, afterwards it got adopted by the far right heavily, but it was Socialist Party. There was a National Socialist, so it had a fascist identity mixed in with something else, so that it could be something else and it could bring in the other side. So it was for German people. It reached across certain divides and focused in on the same issue, and that issue was immigrants and people who were did not have the same national identity as them, which is exactly what Douglas Murray does, isn't it? Isn't that interesting?
They're in Europe and haven't been for 80 years. There are some people on the far left of politics who do play around with the same dark things, particularly the anti-Semitism, and they come a little closer to the centre. Jeremy Corbyn in the UK,
he's not an anti-Semite. That's just. I mean, this is what they do now. Is that he said that really carefully. Oh, there's some people who play around with this bloody right, and then he goes on and he's talking about something that then could be considered separate.
A wreath, remember, at the grave, or said he was present at the laying of the wreath of a grave to the people who carried out the Munich Olympics massacre. He got a bit too close to power, but effectively the British public said, we don't like this stuff. We don't want this noxious anti-Semitism. But there is a bit of it from the
British government. No, what happened was the Israel lobby went inside the Labour Party, ripped it apart, caused a fracture, and now this horrible Tory light, no opposition, proper opposition to war, has come from it. This Keir Starmer Labour Party, which is almost inert, has no flavour, because all flavour has been taken out on purpose.
Far left in Europe. But the main driver, the people who were marching down the streets in the centre of Berlin the other day, they're recent arrivals in Germany. And what we're hearing now from Schulz, from other prominent German politicians, is, I think, an overdue acknowledgement of the fact that because Germany, since the last war, decided it had to show itself to be a bastion of liberal values, and decided those liberal values included liberal immigration values, a country that did not need more anti-Semites has imported millions more anti-Semites.
I mean, I mean, again, he's on Israeli TV, remember? So he's trying to evoke the war with nearly every sentence. Evoke the war and the Holocaust and all of that brings with it. And you know, the British always create some form of fracture that can then be two sides fighting while they watch. This is something that you see throughout history.
Now, that is going to be a very big problem in the years ahead, principally for Germany, as it is in my country, in Britain. It is very noticeable that it is the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, the First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, and the head of Labour in North Scotland, Anna Sarwar, who were the first people in the Labour Party to call for the ceasefire and break the party's rules on this. Why? Because, like much of the Muslim world, they don't care about their fellow Muslims.
Again, that wry smile. Look at that wry smile. And why? Because they don't care about their fellow Muslims. And why don't they care about? Because they're heartless, Molech worshipping devils. That's why they are.
I'm convinced of this and can argue it all evening. They don't care when hundreds of thousands of Muslims are killed in Yemen. They don't care
agree.
when hundreds of thousands of Muslims are killed in Syria.
Don't
There's
agree.
been not 1% of the people on the streets of Europe in recent weeks who marched in those days. They don't.
Listen, it's normalized behavior of killing Muslims, normalized genocide. This is normalized. It's completely normalized. There's loads of people who tried to protest, and then protest laws have changed, haven't they? And they've gerrymandered the routine behind organizing protests so that you can't organize anything. You're just stuck in a pasty. You just got a load of pastry around you, and you're stuck in a meaty pasty, and you're like, I'm an onion.
Really care. What they do care about is when a conflict involves anyone.
Oh, here we go. Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Oh my God.
From the Muslim world and the Jews. The simple rage, and I have worked for years with moderate Muslims, with liberal Muslims, with liberal Muslims who try to evolve on all sorts of issues with their
who all say you're a twat.
Religion. The one thing that it is hardest to get even the most liberal Muslims over is the right of Israel
to eat pork. I agree with them. The right of Israel to eat pork is something Muslims can't get down with.
To exist.
Oh,
to self-determine.
Oh,
to defend itself.
Oh, to defend itself. Well, to defend itself against what? I mean, if you take a load of land and then you occupy a load of land and then people are attacking you back, and there's it gets really wearing to listen to all of that. Self-determined? What, self-determined by taking a load of land? That's not self-determined anymore. That's something else. And the right to exist. Well, to exist in a form that gives rights for someone else to exist. You can't have that Israel has a right to exist by taking away someone else's right to exist, which is the current dynamic. The current paradigm is these people who have an ancient birthright to the land and who are 50 to 80% genetically similar to Canaanite, Bronze Age Canaanite descendants. Yeah, so I've been in the land for 15,000 years. 15 to 11,000 years have been in that land. Those people have a right to exist too. The Palestinians have a right to exist too. We may call them Palestinians now. They are the people of that land. They have a right to exist. You can't just say the other side doesn't see the right to exist if you don't see their right to exist. It's a two-way street. It's not just one person gets the right to exist, and that's the way it is under this paradigm here.
Which are hundreds of thousands of people across Europe marching against the Jewish state. And by
They're not marching against a Jewish state. You know it. They're marching against war. Everybody always marches against war. They march against a much stronger aggressor. They're fighting a much weaker foe. They march against the unfair conditions that the Palestinians and the Gazan people are stuck under, that leads them to voting to people in power out of desperation and to rely on people who then attack Israel, and not only attack Israel, but do it without Israel seemingly having a defense all of a sudden. Like suddenly all of the defense of Israel gets switched off at the same time, and then suddenly there's this attack and no one knew about it. No one knew it was coming. Well, did they? I think people knew. I think loads of people. I think everybody will find that out.
By the way, I mean, I live in New York much of the time. It's the same there.
Of course you do.
The day after the massacre on October the 7th, I went down to Times Square. There was an anti-Israel protest. How do I know it's anti-Israel and not just pro-peace? Well, the people waving placards glorifying what had happened 24 hours ago was one giveaway. As it was that they didn't even allow Israel to...
Glorifying, what does that mean? You have to give an example to that, because yes, there's things on people on both sides. I've seen videos of Jewish people going, yes, every Muslim should be killed, Palestine should be wiped off the map. You can see them on both sides. They're called humans. Humans have some nutbags. We know this.
Mourn the dead. They hadn't even found the dead before these people turned out.
Okay, stop killing the children in Gaza. Stop the war in Gaza. Oh, these placards, freedom for Palestine. These are placards. These are
deep shame
all right.
For a country like mine. We should feel intense shame that it's on the streets of London that people are calling for jihad.
Listen to what he's saying. So he gets down to the nub of it. What do I want to achieve? I want my people to feel deep shame about supporting the people they support, because that will be the only way to stop them supporting. Deep shame. So this is Mr. Deep Shame. I understand Douglas Deep Shame Murray. He really wants you to feel deep shame all of the time, because Douglas Deep Shame Murray. I think that's really Douglas Deep Shame Murray. It's very hard for me to say, but it seems about right.
And Intifada. We had a taste of Intifada, by the way, ourselves on our London Underground. It's a intense shame of the Australians.
When the bus blew up near the Israeli embassy, Benjamin Netanyahu was standing in that embassy at the time on 7/7. Just saying.
That it should be Muslim migrants into Australia that stand outside the Sydney Opera House and chant "Gas the Jews." This, I always say, Israel has, as everyone in this room...
But there's chanting happening on the other side saying "kill the Palestinians."
...knows, and everyone watching knows. Many problems of your own, political problems.
All these are relative.
They
come down to relative arguments.
But this is our problem.
Right. Well, let's talk about that now in the context of Israel's current battle against Hamas. As you said, even those people who say that they're friends of Israel are pressuring Israel.
So you've had 6 minutes of Douglas Murray speaking here, and the other guys haven't said anything yet.
For a ceasefire. We hear again the accusations that the response is disproportionate, even among people who are Israel's close.
Rockets, missiles, paragliding army men, units, kidnapping, complete destruction of your town, bombing of hospitals. Ooh, disproportion.
Allies.
Yes, well, I mean, I would say Israel is the one country in the world never allowed to win a war. You always have to, at best, have a draw.
What? Not allowed to win a war, but because what will it mean? Okay, right. This is again a really frustrating point about Israel. That's why I make that noise. So noise. Sometimes I just feel it. It just bubbles out of me. This is the thing. What does he mean there? He means the complete destruction of Palestine. So they're not allowed to take all of the land. They're not allowed to rule the people. They're not allowed to slowly push them out of their home through legal technicalities and make them move out or make their lives really hard. They're not allowed to suddenly rule over these people as though they're military victors. That's what he's saying. It's all about Palestinians not having the right to exist. Douglas Murray doesn't think Palestinians should have a right to exist.
So Israel can be attacked, and Israel is allowed to attack
That's
a little bit in order to return to the moment just before the attack. That doesn't seem fair to me, nor does it seem to me to be consistent with the rules of war historically. Wars finish when someone wins and someone loses, and the victor knows they've won and the person who loses knows they've lost. The international community, it seems to me, including my own government in Great Britain, never allows this to happen. And don't forget, I mean, this is...
So it has been somewhat more supportive.
You should be careful here, because there's I was talking to Richard Poe recently, who does claim that the British purposely make a situation that's going to fall apart and be disruptive, so that they can implement people and other policies as those are the heroes coming to save you with the, oh, this is the answer to all of the prayers you have, and we can just give it to you. Look, we're here. The British have turned up, and we're here to help you.
Of Israel this time,
the top bit is supportive. As I always say, that we have a Democrat president in the United States and a Conservative Prime Minister in the UK who have been very supportive. It's true that at the penthouse level in politics abroad, it's okay. The foundations, however, are rotten. Are rotten. You go 2 generations below Joe Biden in the Democrat Party, you do not have the intense pro-Israel feelings that Joe Biden has.
Intense pro-Israel feelings that Joe Biden has, and his son Hunter Biden, who has intense pro-Israel feelings. Yes, loads of intense feelings does Hunter Biden. So does Joe Biden. Corn Pop. Wasn't he his favorite black person? Was he his favorite Israeli? Who knows? Because I can tell you Joe Biden doesn't. Joe Biden, the intense Israeli, this is such a suck up. Douglas Murray is basically, he's trying to get Israeli citizenship. He's trying to be an honorary Israeli right now.
A mix. I would say there are some politicians. And
you have to lick his lips.
The Republican Party. I'm not making a political
I understand.
point.
There are some exceptions, and Richie Torres is a congressman from New York, for example.
Yeah.
There are exceptions. Let's talk about what you're doing here. What brought you to come here to Israel, and what you've seen on the ground here?
I always come to Israel during wars, partly because I like to see with my own eyes always what I'm writing about. I do that with any war.
That's an interesting thing to say. Yeah, I always come to Israel during war. It makes me think that he is planted in there every time there's a war. That seems interesting, doesn't it? I wonder if that thing that he just said was giving away something bigger.
I'm writing about, I was in the Ukraine last year, reporting from the front lines of that conflict. I thought it was very important to be here and see what was happening with my own eyes. I was in one of the kibbutz you mentioned earlier yesterday, seeing the remains of that community. And I still think that the international community hasn't really allowed Israel time to even grieve what happened.
Wait a minute. The international community hasn't allowed Israel to grieve about what happened. Yeah, Israel has just gone straight into war mode, which seems like very convenient. Oh, what happened? Suddenly we looked the other way for the first time in like 25 years or something. We looked in the opposite direction, and a load of people came in and killed a load of people just to, with all the modern technology we got nowadays, and we just did not notice it happening. We intercept every single call, but we just didn't seem to notice this happening. So it just happened. That was it. It just happened. And so we should go to war straight away. Straight. No grieving for us, because we're going straight in.
It's extraordinary to me how I spend my life in news and media, but it's extraordinary to me how this story got knocked down the news agenda within 24 hours, maybe.
Everything here is about sympathy towards Israel. Everything Douglas Murray here is saying is about sympathy towards Israel.
And I think it's important, over to my New York Post column tomorrow from Near Oz. I think it's very important the world knows more about this. I think many people don't realize this was like a battalion-sized terrorist deployment into Israel. And I think the stories need to be told, and told far more even than they have been so far. And I suppose the second thing is I want to see what's happening on the ground, I suppose, at the Gaza border, and doing more in the days and the weeks ahead.
Well, if you could stay with us, Douglas, because you mentioned that October 7th, of course.
I'm wondering who is paying Douglas Murray to attend all of the areas of war so he can talk about how evil the other side to those on the one side are, his side.
Attack, or even beyond that, you might say. There is some interesting development relating to that today. A bombshell investigation by the NGO Honest Reporting suggested that photojournalists in the Gaza Strip may have known in advance about the October 7th.
It won't only be them. This is it. It won't only be them. This is the start of the narrative that's gonna seep out. It's gonna come out really like slowly, really just like ooze out slowly. This whole some people knew it was gonna happen. It was journalists who knew it was gonna happen. Can you what did you just say? Israeli journalists? That's what I'm finding this very interesting, because this is what I'm saying is that there's no way this happened and people didn't know. And I'm not saying they kept it to themselves or they wanted to scoop. I'm saying that this was set up to be Israelis 9/11.
Shell investigation by the NGO Honest Reporting suggested that photojournalists in the Gaza Strip may have known in advance about the October 7th massacre, and that's creating a storm in Israel and beyond. A senior correspondent, Owen Alterman, reports on how the episode is raising questions about the roles of some journalists in the conflict, while, of course, sparking anger across Israel.
Yeah, wow.
Pictures of the October 7th massacre, not only from Hamas perpetrators, not only from Israeli survivors, but also here from photojournalists entering Israel from Gaza. The subject of a report out Wednesday from the pro-Israel watchdog group, Honest Reporting.
What were they doing there so early on what would ordinarily have been a quiet Saturday morning? Was it coordinated with Hamas? Did the respectable wire services, which published their photos, approve of their presence inside enemy territory?
Right, I'm putting down that some of these people who have been caught out here will be dead within the next few months, because this is operation written all over it. There's Israeli operation written all over this. If you want my guess, you can not care about my opinion. I don't give a fuck if you care about my opinion or not, and I'm not going to force it upon you. But my guess of what actually happened is that they had chatter for ages, and it led to multiple investigations that have all documented the same thing was being planned, and they've ended up. In these situations, they usually help support the actual operation side of it, so they can get close into it, and leave it happen, because it would cause such an issue that they would get a free pass. They would be able to finish what needs to be finished. They always needed Israel's 9/11, and they were trying to create it for a long time, maybe even from before 9/11.
Together with the terrorist infiltrators?
The central questions are about the role of a journalist. At what point is a journalist too cozy with a terrorist organization?
There you go.
And at what point must a journalist step out and prevent a war crime?
And just imagine that you were all pro-Israeli and anti-anyone who wasn't Israeli. Then how would you stop a journalist from being reputable, from having a good reputation? Unless what better way than to make them into a terrorist themselves, to make what they're doing and the line and the border that journalists walk all of the time, because it is honestly there's things I do that could get me into trouble. I know that in my journalism I skirt between the lines, and sometimes I get into a situation where I'm like talking with someone or doing something where I'm like, I'm not sure this is to use the term, this is all kosher. This is journalism is a strange thing. You're documenting information, and if people on the other side know other people are going to read it, then they try and influence you in all different types of ways. I get pushed in loads of different ways to say a certain thing or do a certain thing by certain actors. I'm aware of it, really hyper aware of it, because I investigate intelligence agencies and agents doing exactly that at a high level. And for it, I have learned about the people I am reporting on. I've learned about psychology, and I've learned about my own psychology and understanding how to notice fallacies. And you hear me mention fallacies all the time. I'm always trying to spot out when something is a fallacy, when something, it just makes you believe that something is true for reasons that might not make it true. You know, you could still have a fallacy and the thing could still be true. That is part of a fallacy, but other parts, it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means at the end. Now, all of this is hard to do because journalists are so attacked. And if you're on the other side to what this is, then you're in trouble. And what this is the end game. The end game. You know this is the end game.
At the expense of that journalist's core role, documenting events and explaining reality.
They were there. They witnessed terrorist attacks, these people. And instead of trying to stop these terrorist attacks.
Whoa. Right, okay. So if you were in war, that would be seen as, if you were in war, you were journaling war. Instead of trying to stop the war, instead of trying to get in way of the people who have got guns, which journalists, instead of, they were journaling something as it was happening. They were probably told, if you hear, you're going to get a big story. I can promise you any journalist will be like, yeah, big story, you say. Enormous story, my brother. You will not believe the story. It is so big. It is the best story in the world. You will love it. Just turn up. You turn up, you start documenting it. You're supposed to wrestle down all of the terrorists yourself like some Hulk and kill everybody and stop the terrorist attack happening and warn Jack Bauer to come out and save you. And Jason Bourne can come out and do some stuff too. Why not? It's complete fantasy land. This is obviously now a propaganda piece that's demonizing journalists reporting on anything that isn't on the Israeli side.
They photographed them to the world. They did things that were unethical.
One photographer, a freelancer working with AP, seems to have relished the attack. And here is seen smiling with Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza.
If you're with people who could kill you, you're not going to be a dick to them. I mean, holy hell. If you're a journalist, it doesn't matter whether he is a journalist or not. What they're framing it as is if he is a journalist. If he is a journalist and he's currently documenting something and he's from Gaza, he's from Palestine, and he is probably going to be pro-Palestinian anyway. But to see that, it says that you would not be a dick to the person who could end your life and is currently killing people and ordering other people to kill people. That's the way humanity works. They shit themselves when we get to this stage here. There's no way that is anything but like, oh, that guy is still in danger if he was disagreeing with all of that.
If there were journalists who knew about the massacre, who stayed quiet and filmed while children were being massacred, they are no different from the terrorists.
If there were politicians who knew about the massacre, who stayed quiet and filmed while children were being massacred, they are no different from the terrorists and will share the same fate. If there were politicians, let's change that round. Think about that. Think about that.
Will share the same fate.
There, senior Israeli leader Benny Gantz drawing his conclusion Thursday, with the unit of the Israeli Prime Minister's office calling the photographers, quote, partners in crimes.
Everybody here is 50% plus Canaanite people, descended to Canaanites. This is terrible. It's so terrible.
Against humanity, and asking media outlets for clarification, as Israelis focus their anger at those they see as Hamas's helpers.
And there has been some reaction from some of these media outlets since that report was prepared. AP, New York Times are saying none of their staff members had any advanced knowledge of the attacks.
Not. What?
And they deny that any of their regular journalists crossed over in the border, in terms of at least the New York Times.
Well, of course, New York Times, AP, like big people like them and CNN and BBC, they would never admit that. They would never get that sort of access, would they? They'd be hoping they'd get that sort of access so they could tell the Zionists. They give everybody back. Quick, go to Zionist Central. Ding, 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 ding. Hello, Zionist Central. This is Zionist Dave speaking. Hello, Zionist Dave. I've got some information. There's going to be an attack. Oh, Zionism be praised. Let us go forward. You know, the world does not work like that. Their little world that they create and the world that the other side create to kind of like, when they clash into each other, they become comedic. That's not the way
Times
it works.
does, there was one. The CNN, I believe, did say it would no longer work with one of those reporters. Of course, this raises some questions about the role in the media and anyone who...
They're not talking to these other guys at all. They're just going to go back to Douglas Murray.
Looked on YouTube.
Go on, Doug Bot.
Seen you in the last over the last few weeks. Has seen you in some very combative interviews with the media, and this conflict in particular, I think, because of, again, as you said,
I find that really interesting and telling. I'm just going to say that I'm reading maybe way too much into that little bit there. But what he said, he's talking to another man, and he's talking as though the media is an external entity to them both. Think about that contextually.
In interviews with the media, and
we've been watching you in interviews with the media.
This conflict in particular, I think, because of, again, as you said, the ferocity or the atrocities committed by Hamas would have so.
I'm arguing that Douglas Murray is part of the media, and this guy should be part of the media too. So why do they see each other as separate from the media? Who are they a separate part of?
Only made Israelis feel this was something different, and yet for some, the narrative of the media went back to a very familiar tone fairly soon.
Oh yeah, it's always familiar. I mean, everybody knows how familiar it is who watches this conflict. The normal thing is for entities like, for instance, the BBC, CNN, New York Times, is anything that comes out from the Israeli authorities is treated with intense skepticism. Saying things like, according to Israeli government sources, which is a sort of warning sign. It's a scare quote. And yet, as we know, for instance, with the hospital car park bombing the other week, they will quote not just Hamas's account of something, they'll quote Hamas's figures on something.
But if you've got no other figures, then you tend to quote the figures that they expect it to be. It's really hard to know what Hamas say that's true and what Hamas say that isn't, and what Israeli Israel Defense Force, and say is true and what they say isn't. It's hard.
On something. The thing that people didn't pick up as much as the original error there was the fact that nobody could explain where the figure 500 came from.
Right.
The only explanation was that somebody in Hamas made it up, handed it to the media, and then the media ran with it.
Well, the media isn't all just one thing, and the media tend to report what Reuters and AP are putting out. So likelihood is that something got onto there and was legitimate enough, and with everything else happening, was reported. Then the reports are torn apart, and then there was a load of propaganda straight away. Boom, that completely swept over the place. It's really hard to see any verification on any side because the media ran with 40 babies, 42 babies. How many babies was it? We were decapitated by Hamas. That is like Iranian babies being brought out of incubators and left to die on the floor. Same story, different day.
It is the same media, by the way, that is constantly telling us that we have to fact check and that they are the fact checkers. The BBC even has a reporter whose full-time job is meant to be to discover disinformation.
Oh my God, my Mariana, I love you, Mariana. I miss you.
The world media and enlighten us. Well, she should walk to the studio next door and she'd hear it going on all the time. This is a big problem for the media,
God.
but it's a consistent one. They consistently believe the terrorists. And there's of course, and some people watching will know this. There's a structural problem within journalism in the West, which is, in a place like Gaza, it is very hard to find somebody who is an honest reporter.
Oh wow! Okay, there you go. Just straight out, we gotta. What would you want to do if you were Israel, a defense force, and you wanted to put out a psyop propaganda campaign that means everybody's listening to you and the other side is completely delegitimized? Your line would be, the other side doesn't have one honest journalist amongst them. Look at what he's doing. Look at what he's doing. It's shameless. He's got no shame. He's got no shame as a Zionist crusader. Oh my God, he's so terrible. Don't get onto his bandwagon just because it seems like it's a bandwagon. Just stay off it.
It's the nature of it. I've known enough Palestinian journalists in my time, as everyone here has, who have not been able to operate in the areas they used to operate in because they've said one critical thing about one Palestinian figure who's in charge, and that's it for them. So inevitably, everyone is compromised.
Do you know this?
Everyone is compromised who's reporting from a zone like Gaza.
I don't believe him, to be very honest.
The media believes it needs the sources, and instead of putting the scare quotes around the Hamas sources, they put the scare quotes around the Israeli government sources. And this has been the good news about this is that in this conflict, in my view, the response to this is far, far better advanced than it has been in any other conflict. There is now a whole
it is better advanced,
of organizations, people like Honest Reporting, you cited there, of actual fact checkers in the media, groups, organizations, individuals around the world.
Wait a minute.
Who actually do chase this stuff up now.
Wait a minute. He was just saying that there was fact checkers who don't know how to get fact, and this is all negative. And now he's saying, and now we have fact checkers. He was the greatest thing in the world. Douglas Murray is an idiot nearly all of the time. Nearly all of the time. Eventually, you'll see this.
Bring it to huge notice. And we have the advantage of this being able to go around the traditional media sources and go straight to the public through social media. So there's a
the fact checkers are nearly all related to traditional media sources, nearly all of them. If they're not, a load of them are related, especially when they talk about this, are related to things like Bellingcat and stuff, end up being like intelligence front operations. That's what they look like. This guy is a funneler. He's an aggregator, aggravating and agitating to push you into some sort of adjunct area. Oh, I pushed it again. I'm in the avenue. I'm in his avenue. I'm in Douglas Murray Avenue.
In the social media as in the real world. But I think actually that a lot of the truth is coming out in this conflict. A lot more of the truth is coming out in this conflict than any conflict in this region I've covered in the last 20 years.
All right, Douglas Murray, you're one of the...
He's like suddenly he's covered all of these conflicts in a way that's meaningful, but he always has the same slant to nearly every single one of his arguments, and it is that of this side is the best, our side is the best, supreme, and the other side are monsters, and we must demonize them. But it's all just like it's like going through the tick sheet of what you have to do as Israel and Hamas. Israel in the mass. It's almost they've stuck him in the sentence together. What you got to do as Israel is make everybody say you can't trust the other side. Nothing they do is true or real. You can only trust us, and there's come to us for your information. We will tell you all of the truth. That is such a negative model for what they're doing. Douglas Murray fits that model really well.
People here now reporting. Thank you for coming to Israel at this time of conflict, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, you'd be getting
24 News.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Bucks and kudos. He's going to be making money galore. Money galore. Douglas Murray, the king of money. He's going to be rolling in it. Rolling. He's going to love it. He's going to love it. Everybody wants to be a friend to Douglas Murray because he's saying the things that are popular at this time in particular. And there's been plenty of times where he said things that aren't popular at all. But nearly all of the time, he has just basically said the same thing. Them bad, us good. Them bad, us good. Them bad, us good.